Hi, I'm Annika Johnson from Al Johnson's in Sister Bay. I hope you enjoy my new video series called Door County Girl. These are stories of my life, the people and places that I love, and of course how we all survive here in northern Wisconsin. You can come back as often as you like, but don't forget to subscribe to Al's YouTube channel. I'll be posting lots of really cool new videos. So let's go! Welcome to another episode of Door County Girl. I am back in the kitchen at Al Johnson's Swedish restaurant, and we did a little series of videos with some of our kitchen members that we cannot run without, and one of them happens to be Rolf Johnson, and he's my brother. He's the baby of the family. And again, he's the one that I refer to as a cartoon character because his life is like a cartoon character. He told me something yesterday. I said, he was trying to explain what his job was. And he said, well, I'm like a fireman. I put out small fires everywhere. But I thought that's what he does around here pretty much. But he jumps in where he's needed, and he's got pretty much the take on everything around here. So please enjoy this next video with Rolf.
We'd head down from home in the morning to Sister Bay Beach, hang out there all day, and if you wanted something to eat, I'd grab a couple of friends, we'd go to Al's and they'd feed us, and we'd back to the beach again. And we thought that was routine. We thought that was a regular way to go. And even my best friend had, his father had a grocery store, Happy Herman and Sons. Same thing, you wanted soda pop, you got Jolly Good and a candy bar, you'd go over to Happy Herman and that's what you got. And out the door you walked, you didn't pay for anything, they just handed it to you. And it was like, nah, every small town isn't like that. Maybe they are, I don't know. But I think that we all enjoyed that pretty much. I think it's kind of disappeared. You know, you play kick the can at midnight sometimes, and the parents still weren't too worried about the kids, you know. Somebody knew where they were, and they could call that one parent, and oh, I saw him down. Okay, as long as you saw him, I'm okay with that, you know. And then you come strolling home about, 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning sometimes. These were summer nights, so I mean, this wasn't routine, but it was special, it was magic. And the other thing too, I could be sitting at my buddy's house on North Spring Road, David Sequist, playing football, and my dad could walk out the door, and this is half a mile away at least, but you got to go down one road and down another, and otherwise you're separated by woods and swamp. And I could hear him yelling, "Rolf! Rolf!" "Oh, your dad's calling, he doesn't sound happy." And jump on my bike, ride all the way home. "What?" "Just want to know where you're at." Oh. David Sequist playing football, I get back on my bike, ride over there. "What did he want? Was he mad? Did he yell at you?" "Oh, he just wanted to know where I was at." And now when I say it in my head, it sounds like something I'd Leave It to Beaver even too. It's like the town just wanted to know what you're up to. And I'll tell you another funny thing, it wasn't so long ago now, I got my own boy, of course, and I was outside yelling for him. This was about 3 years ago, and it was a springtime, and my buddy was up pressure washing up on the bluff, and my voice must have carried. And I was yelling for, "Jesper, Jesper." And then I find him. I walk inside the restaurant. My cell phone rings. It's my buddy Patrick Steves. He says, "You just calling Jesper?" I said, "Yeah, why? Where are you at?" He goes, "I'm up on the bluff." And he goes, "Christ, I thought it was Al calling for us." He goes, "It made me shiver in my boots a little bit." Going into the kitchen, there was a lot, what I thought were old people working there. Of course, it was my grandmother, who wasn't that old at that time when I was that little. And I thought everybody was Swedish because you would hear the language a lot. But it would be my dad, my mom, my grandmother, my grandfather. And it seemed to me, for some reason or another, whenever they were cleaning, they were kind of singing in Swedish. I don't know why that was. It always seemed to me that's what they were doing. And I asked somebody about that once. And they kind of laughed and they said the same thing. You go, now that I think of it, It was Dickie Burris, actually. And he said even sometimes he goes at, when he's rubbing something down or cleaning something, he said, you got to sing it in Swedish to do it right. Otherwise it doesn't get cleaned. But it was always kind of a hustle and bustle place. I got chased out of there a lot when it was busy. When it was slow, I kind of had run of the place. I think I got under a lot of people's feet too many times, and they get those kids out of here. And I repeat the same thing today to kids that come in the back that might not supposed to be there. My dad certainly had the patience of maybe a bottle of nitroglycerin on a speed bump. I mean, he had this aggressive, passive personality. And I remember he could come in and scream and holler at you about the dish was not being fast enough or the silverware not being clean enough. And if you can't do it right, I'll find somebody that will. And he'd walk out in the dining room and grab a tray and he'd bring the tray back in and he'd ask that same person, hey, I saw you pitch the other day at Gibraltar. You did a hell of a job. A minute ago I wanted to walk out of here, and now he's praising me. So, and a lot of the kitchen was like that. I think that maybe his demeanor wore off on some people, or they maybe saw how to get things done. Be a little aggressive up front, but treat them kindly in the end. Well, I always thought my first job was a dishwasher. When the restaurant first started out, we had a living quarters up on top where my great uncle Charlie lived, and he would come down and do dishes. Well, he didn't speak English and he didn't have a tooth in his head. And if I was doing dishes, he'd come and grab me by the nape of my neck or my ear and pull me out all the way to the dining room, set me at the counter, get me a cup of hot chocolate, and he'd walk back in the kitchen. He'd do all the dishes, come back out, grab me, drag me back there, and there's nothing for me to do, but I could at least stand there if they came in one by one. But if we got behind, he would catch me up. But so I said, I was a dishwasher. Yeah, I was, but I really remember being at the beach one day. I think I told you this earlier, that my dad needed somebody to run the toasters. So he called me and my best friend Patrick Steves up, or yelled across the street, get over here. So we shook the sand off and we came in there, and David Dobner set us up with hats and aprons. He goes, we're making chicken a la king for the women's club of Sister Bay. And he goes, your job is to make toast points. So all we did is man the toasters, and we lined up an assembly line. He made toast, I buttered them, cut them in quarters, and passed them on to Dabo. And Dabo put the chicken a la king and then hit the bell, and out the girls would take it. And I remember Patrick saying, he went home and told his mother, he goes, I'm a cook at Al's, all of 11 or 12 years old. But I think the following year, 13, is when we started washing dishes on a regular basis. And it was always kind of nice because I remember many, many times we'd come out of school and the first week was often a paid vacation. He said, the kids take the first week off because work is going to get real hard real fast. And he paid you for that week and you didn't do anything. It was unusual. We'd all look at each other and it's like, hey, I got a paycheck. We didn't do anything. And we'd ask him and he says, you're going to be doing stuff real soon. So I remember from a very early age, we were making a trip down to Florida, and we were at a Holiday Inn, and we were eating, and there was a gentleman there getting an argument with the management, and he was a very quiet gentleman. I mean, he was sitting there, his head was bowed, he was very bashful, it looked to me, and his problem was he couldn't pay for his meal, and they were ready to call the police on the gentleman, and he had a party there. I mean, it was a family of maybe 4 or 5 people. And my dad quietly went over there and paid the bill up at the cash and didn't want him to know about it. And I kind of watched it happen, and he didn't say anything. And we got in the car. I remember driving maybe about another 20 minutes or so before I spoke up, and I said, what happened back there with that guy? He goes, I paid his bill. He needed some money, he needed a break, that's all. Wow. Those kind of stories, it seemed to happen more now when I think back at it. Sometimes I didn't notice it as much, but I certainly noticed that one. I think if you pick up a copy of Norbert Bly's Doorway and you read about all that, I say that a lot. I say that, if you're going to come to Door County for the first time or you plan on moving up here, you'd have to read the copy of Doorway and then go to the AC Tap on a Friday night, and you might meet some of the characters that he had written about. Many are dead and gone now, but you still get a flavor for the county and the characters. And I think sometimes people thought, well, I don't want to be known as a character. And I said, why not? You know, I said, now I'm thinking about it, yeah, I think Door County is built on those characters. Yeah, and I think some people might have thought it was an insult at one time, you know, what, a cartoon character? What do you mean? You know, no, you're part of the woven fabric that make up the whole community that makes it desirable to be here or visit, for that matter, you know, or wish you could stay here, you know. Because I've never seen Sister Bay for the first time. I've never come down a hill. You know, every town along the way from Sturgeon Bay to here is you come down a hill and you enter a town. Whether you're coming into Fish Creek, Egg Harbor, or Ephraim, and then you come into Sister Bay or Ellison Bay, it's always down a hill. And to some people, I guess that's magical. To us, it's old hat. And maybe we're spoiled because of that. We don't notice it. So I try to slow down sometimes, and sometimes I'll even explain it to somebody I'm riding with. And I'll say, you know, we've never seen Sister Bay for the first time. And we see the changes so casual that when somebody goes away maybe for 10 years and comes back, they a little bit shock. But the charm is always seems to still be there. Yeah. And I've talked to people that have summer homes or vacation areas up here, and I think they like to call it north of the tension line. But they make a habit out of coming through the scenic route, you know, Manitowoc Way and Algoma and Trivers and Kewanee. And they said their heartbeat would slow down. You know, they said, this is it. We're making our way. So, and I said, I kind of laugh, but I was like, oh, I guess so. But now when I think about it, I'm like, you know, they're right. They are right. And once you've been somewhere else too, or you're involved in the hustle and bustle of a city, or even Milwaukee or Chicago driving, you're just like, wow, yeah, it can be congested here. But I remember when I bought my first house, and my dilemma was, well, it's an 8-minute drive to work. And I told my friends in Minnesota then, they're like, are you kidding me? It takes us 4 hours some days to get home from work. I said, well, 8 minutes. I wasn't sure what I was going to do at all. And my brother was going to Arizona State, so when I was nearing my junior year, I got to go out there on spring break, and I visited my brother. And what I saw was attractive, whether it be from the party atmosphere at that age, of course the gals around campus, and the weather, and golf courses. I like to golf, and my brother happened to live in a little house right on a third hole of a municipal golf course. And when I was there visiting him, the beer cart would come by with the gal and selling candy bar cigars and snacks and, of course, beer. And well, they don't card you on a golf course. And we'd just sit outside the house and we'd flag her down, and she'd drive over there and she goes, oh, you guys, you know, and she was always generous enough to sell us whatever, because she was just some college kid as well. And if that's your impression of what college life is going to be, you're like, I'm all for it. Well, it's not really like that. But you show up and you actually got to go to school. So after I graduated my senior year, I decided I was going to go to Arizona State. My brother was out there, and Mitch Larson was out there, so I knew some people. And it was a little rough in the beginning because I didn't take a dorm, and I should have right away. And my advice from Mitch was, whether you love the dorm life or hate the dorm life, he goes, that's where you're going to meet your friends. That's where you're going to cut your chops. And that's, you got to kind of live that style first. And I didn't believe him, so I got an apartment first. And I hated it. I hated it. I didn't meet anybody, didn't know anybody. So 2 months into the apartment, there was an opening in one of the dorms, and I decided to go there. Was Manzanita Hall. And that was the first year. It was 12 stories, I believe, 8 floors girls and floor floors of guys, alternating. And I met some of my best friends out there. I had the best time out there. And I went out there for, I wasn't sure, it was caught between sports officiating and psychology. And I used to ump high school games, scrimmage games, not league games. And we used to teach golfing. Yeah, I knew the rules. I wasn't very good at it, but so I could teach it to somebody. I could teach the style of play. But after a year out there, I just felt like it really wasn't what I wanted to do anymore. And I came home, and I didn't go back that year. And I sat around thinking, what do I really like doing? And that summer was probably the last time I ever saw my dad scuba dive. And I looking back, and he used to do that quite a bit. Every once in a while in the summertime, he'd come off of work, he'd put on his wetsuit, and he'd put on this old scuba tank, old dual hose regulator, and go diving around the dock. And it always kind of intrigued me. And I had gotten certified when I was 14 through Dave Ellman, arranged for a guy to come up after taking an introductory course. And there was 4 of us up here at that time that was interested in scuba diving. We all got certified in Jacksonport. He taught the classes. And, and the Hollows, the Shallows Motel that was owned by the Ericksons, who still own it today. So we did the pool lessons there in the open water in Jacksonport. And I started thinking, well, I really like scuba diving. So I started looking at schools about diving, maybe becoming a diving instructor. And then I thought, you know what? I really like this commercial diving thing. You know, I like to go deep and I like to have these helmets on, and this would be kind of fun. So I started looking around, and I talked to my whole high school guidance counselor, George Erickson, and he looked into the school for me to see if it was a legitimate school. It was a Santa Barbara City College, and I took some courses over at the UCSB as well, University of Santa Barbara, California. So I made arrangements first to go to Los Angeles, because there was a diving school there I wanted to check out, and the big city was a little shock for me. And Arizona was kind of spread out, but when I got downtown Los Angeles Harbor, and that was a little scary actually. And I had all my stuff, and I remember staying in a hotel there, my eyes wide open all night, thinking they're all going to get stolen, but I lucked out and it didn't. And I remember at that time Ronald Reagan was vacationing up in Santa Barbara. So I made a road trip up there, and I thought, you know what, we checked out this school earlier, I think I'm going to enroll right away. So they had a program there called the Marine Science and Technology. And I thought, that's what I want to do. They were running gas chambers and diving bells and diving hard hats and Kirby Morgans and stuff like that. They were welding underwater, working on pipelines off of the Channel Harbor. And I did that. And I also taught scuba diving out there. So I got my instructors out there, and I worked for part-time off and on once in a while for the city of Santa Barbara, cleaning the piers and things like that. I worked in the harbor of Santa Barbara, taking care of all the sailboats in there. They have a 3,000 boat marina there. And I think the company I worked for, he probably took care of about 1,000 of those boats. So we had work to do every day pretty much. And then when I graduated and finished up on that, I came back that summer, and I was hoping to get a job in Guam running a submarine. But that same year, just about every one of my friends graduated college as well and were pursuing their careers. And it left us shorthanded in the restaurant big time. And David Dobner had announced that he was going to be leaving shortly because he was going to buy a restaurant. And actually, coincidentally, the restaurant my dad got his start at, Johnny's Cottage Restaurant. And he sat me down and said, you know, this would be a fairly easy transition right now, because everybody's wondering, you know, who's going to replace me, and all these people, all these other cooks are leaving now. And he goes, I think that you'd be the one to do it. And maybe my dad talked to him already, I don't know. And I just felt I couldn't. For one, I didn't think I was mature enough. 2, I didn't think I had it in my heart. And 3, I didn't think these guys were going to listen to me, because they were all much better than I was. Every one of them was a better cook by far. They knew everything about the restaurant. I didn't. And he said, I can sit you down and teach you what you need to know. And then you're going to have to learn the rest on your own. But it's not that hard. If you have any questions, just ask. And that's basically what we did. I followed him around for about 2 weeks. He let me do the things and make my mistakes, and he'd catch them. And as far as the cooking went, I learned all the cooking on my way up, you know, when I was going to school and coming home for summer. So anywhere between Danny Peterson, David Dobner, Johnny Ostrand, Kurt Bastian, Randy Buys, big influence. All those guys taught me how to cook. So I always like to say that I'm not a chef. Those guys are chefs. I'm a cook. And I always like to tease them a little bit. The cook does the real work. So I was out there from 85 to 89. So Yeah, and I took some marine biology class. I thought, well, I'm going to try to get into the sciences as well, too, but I stopped at the marine science and technology with an AS degree in that, and I stayed at that. But my instructor is what I like doing. So for a short time, I'd come up here in the summertime, and I'd be listed with my it was NAUI, NAUI, National Underwater Organism Underwater Instructors Association, I'm sorry. And I would do referral dives. So this way I didn't have to do all the book work. I didn't have to do all the classroom stuff. They'd take the class in Chicago or Minnesota or do all their pool stuff. And then I'd be on the list and they'd say, well, you got to do 5 open water dives. We have an instructor up in Door County. I'm like, well, Door County, they like diving up there. Okay. So they'd call me up and I'd just do 5 easy open water dives and make sure they knew how to do all their stuff and I could send them on their way. And let me back up a little bit though. My dad, I used to tease him, because I said, who taught you how to scuba dive? And he said he was self-taught. And I said, well, I was told self-taught or taught by idiots, but it wasn't true. He wasn't self-taught, I learned later on that Doug Bouchard had taught my dad how to scuba dive. And he taught a lot of guys up in Door County how to scuba dive, and I did not know that until he came in the restaurant one day and he told me the whole story. And of course my dad had passed away by then already. And I talked to, I'm gonna get his last name wrong. It was Eric, I want to say Eric Carlson. And boy, when I met him at Doug's funeral, he was probably late 80s. And he said he remembers taking the class with my dad right across the street from the restaurant. He taught it right off of Bunda's Pier. And I said, I wish I would have known that when my dad was alive, I think my dad always had it in to be a restaurateur or work in that hospitality, even though his degree was in criminology. And but I think the same thing. I think you're right. I think maybe that you're kind of drawn to that initially, or it's in you somewhere. Maybe it's like kind of a wanderlust, And but what you come back to is what you really, really know. You see when somebody skips a beat. And Al, he used to give a speech every year. We'd get together and he'd say, we're all like a machine. This restaurant runs like a machine. Imagine a wheel with so many spokes. As you start losing the spokes, you're going to lose that machine. So he'd say that's why everything has to be in place. It's got to be done a certain way. Now, the girls come in the morning and there's nothing going on. The first thing they do is they clean all the trays. They scrub all the trays down. We're looking at the trays, they're not dirty. We weren't that busy yesterday. It doesn't matter. That's the routine. You do it every single day till it's muscle memory. That way when you come in, you don't stand around twiddling your thumbs, drinking coffee, and all of a sudden 6 tables come in and you feel like you're behind, you go grab a tray and it's dirty. So it's never going to be dirty. It's going to be clean because they took care of it this morning, and the minute they don't, everybody's going to call them on it. You're the one that put the hiccup in the gear today, So, and it could be right down to the piece of parsley on the plate. Sometimes you'll get a wait staff will come in and said, the parsley's silly. Nobody ever eats it. And they say it's there for a purpose. And I might not have told the last person what the purpose is. And they reiterate that. What's the purpose? They're like, I don't know. I just know I was told it's there for a purpose. And but it's to add decoration to the plate. Some people enjoy the parsley, but it just adds to the whole plate. I mean, who knows why? There was a gentleman that used to come in, and he loved the fact that he can get a clubhouse and a BLT that looked like the picture menu at Woolworths. And we get a new cook in there. If we don't teach him exactly how we make it, he might make it his own way and stack it on the plate. And we're like, no, that's not how it goes. This is how it goes. If the sandwich meat wasn't cut to a certain thickness, everybody's going to say, whoa, what are you doing? Where'd you learn how to do that? Not here. And that's not how we taught you. And so everybody catches these. They kind of watch each other. But I do remember washing dishes when it was much more strict, I should say. Because I think because personalities change and the staff you have coming up changes. I'm not saying you got to handle them with kid gloves, but sometimes you got to be a little more politically correct, obviously. You and I have both grown up in an era where very few things made you question or blush. And now it's like, oh, did I just say that right, or did I say it wrong? Did I call that item the wrong thing? Did I describe where it came from, inappropriately? And so I remember washing dishes for the first time, and we'd post a sign once a month in the summertime, and it would say Hood Night. And we'd say, well, what's Hood Night? And they say, just show up 9 o'clock Thursday. It would change any night, but the cooks would look at the schedule and decide which is Hood Night going to be. And usually you had David Dobner was in charge of Hood Night. And he was the chief line cook at that time. He ran the whole line where Danny ran the kitchen. And when you're 13, 14 years old, the rules weren't so strict. You could be there till midnight working on a Hood Night. And what that was you took apart the kitchen grease hood system, and you'd crawl up in there and you'd clean it top to bottom. Now, I think you'd have a hard time getting away with some of these things today. I know in the restaurant business, typically you're not allowed to climb a ladder unless if you're under the age of 18. You can't operate a mixer, whether it be a hand mixer. You can drive a motorcycle that goes 0 to 60 in 2.2 seconds, but you can't run a hand blender. You can't. So there are things that I kind of laugh about today. But when we get Hood Night and you would strip the hoods and pull the grills out and clean everything, you could be there sometimes till 1 o'clock in the morning. But then you'd grab yourself a couple of rags and a bar of soap, and afterwards we'd all run across the street to the beach, and then we'd clean up, and it was actually fun. Misery loves company, but it turns into a party after a while because we're in it together, And Hood Night you get used to. But then all of a sudden, 3/4 of the way through summer, it would say GI Night. And you're like, whoa, Hood Night? Now what's GI Night? And I remember John Bastion is like, oh, you're in for a treat. That's general inspection, he'd say. And I said, well, who does that? Danny Pete. And sure enough, Danny would run that night. He'd come in there and everything had to be, it was clean already, but now it had to be white glove clean. And now everything came out. We took the stoves, the griddles, disconnected them out, and put them in the parking lot, and the floor had to be scrubbed right down to the white of the grouts. And if it wasn't done right, you'd do it again. And you could always tell at the beginning of the night if you were going to do it again or not, just by the mood they were in. So sometimes you would kind of slip up a little bit. I remember Lyndon Erickson and I were washing dishes, and he'd always say, don't get it so clean, because they're always going to make you do it again. And he goes, if you get it so clean, you can't find out what you have to do again. But if you leave a little smudge in there somewhere, they're going to find it, and they're going to say, clean that, and you're good to go. And so that was the trick. After he taught me that, he said, always leave a little corner, just a little bit of filth in there, and they're going to come in there, and they're going to catch it, and they're going to say, clean it, and you're good to go. He goes, if it's spotless, they're going to say one more time. And so you learn that real quick. When I came into the picture, by then, my dad, of course, was still there. But now Danny Peterson had left to run the Viking years earlier. That's how David Dobner was in charge. And now it's me. So I say you're looking at 3 military guys that were running it. My dad, Danny, and Dobble. And they ran that kitchen like you were at boot camp every single day. And I mean, nothing was yours to touch without permission. You couldn't turn the radio up. You couldn't do anything. You couldn't change the station. You couldn't ad lib. I mean, you just didn't do it. If you were working, well, I'll do this as a shortcut. If they caught you doing something out of their recipe, out of their routine, they'd let you know it, and you'd start all over again. And you'd always grumble under your breath, how much I'd like to clobber that guy. But in the end, it's that old saying, once you walk a mile in their shoes, because when Dabo put me in charge, and I saw, this is why he does things the way he does them, And even though they all had a little bit a different style of leadership, it was more similar than it was different. I think, and maybe my dad got the ball rolling, but going back to my dad going to school, I mean, he cut his teeth coming up to Door County working for Johnny Veith washing dishes. And then when he was going to school in Marquette, he was working at Woolworth's Five and Dime Diner. And that's where he got the opportunity to remember orders. They called them in. It was too hectic and too busy when that lunch bell would ring for the breweries and the factories would let out, and they would flood Woolworth's diners. So they just shouted the orders out, what you needed, BLT, a clubhouse, give me a plate of waffles or a cheeseburger, a grilled cheese, or a bowl of soup. You just had to memorize it. So they had a system where you just called it in and bunch the items together. If it's breakfast, call all the breakfast. If you skip breakfast, go to the lunch items. If you have a higher ticket item, that's the last thing you call in. And that's how you just kind of learn to remember in that style. And then he incorporated that same style at Al's. And I thought all restaurants were run that way until I worked at a restaurant in Santa Barbara. I remember that they just opened at the Paradise Cafe. And I'll never forget it because all of a sudden they said, "What's on the order?" And I was what they called the wheelman, the ticket guy. I looked at them like, "What are you talking about?" They said, "You said you worked in a restaurant for the last 10 years. And they showed me the ticket, and I'm looking at one. I couldn't read it because it was all chicken scratch to me, but they had their own system as well. So I had to learn that route as well. And I said, I'll go back to the memorizing orders any day. It was much faster, much more efficient, I thought. If somebody comes in for the first time and they look at it and they say, "This is difficult, there's no way I'm going to learn this," and I always say, "Promise me at the end of a couple of days, if you're working here, you're going to say this is easier." And the kitchen is essentially set up like a horseshoe, the way we look at it or the way we explain it. So the grills go down one side, cut across the corner, and then come up on the steam table side. So if somebody comes in for the first time, I say, only thing we do on the left side, the beginning of the U, is breakfast, pancakes and eggs and French toast. So, and that's the order. You call them the pancakes, you call them the eggs, and then you call them the French toast. If you don't have any of those items, or you have one of those items, even normally pancakes, you go to the eggs. If you don't have any eggs, you go to the, if you don't have any of that, then you go right to the lunch item, if it's after 11, of course. So then all of a sudden you start to the grill. What do you go on the grill? It's burgers and grilled sandwiches, and then it goes to the French fryer. So whether it's going to be the fish, perch, or it's going to be chicken, and then it goes to the cold section. It's going to be salads. So all they do is start on one side, look at it, look at their ticket, nothing there, nothing there, oh, I got something there, oh, I got something there. And they usually organize it before they come to call it in, so it's all one fluid movement. And as the other person comes in and calls in theirs, we have 5 cooks at each station. All they are is adding and subtracting what they're responsible for their own section. So if somebody's on pancakes and they skip breakfast altogether, like, they're in the clear. They don't have anything to think about. If they got time, they go help the other guys out. Other than that, they just stand there waiting for their next item to be called in. So it might sound complex, or when you see it, I've had people come in the restaurant business and they watch us as we have a conversation with them, and I pause for a moment to listen to an order, and then we go on to conversation. Like, wait a minute, you just remembered that? And I said, yeah. And they're like, you people are gods. The restaurant, well, I said, it's easy. And they go, no, that cannot possibly be easy. It is really easy. But I think that somewhere along the line, somebody developed the style it was called in. Whoever did that was brilliant, and I don't know if I give my dad credit. I'm sure if he was here, he'd probably take credit for it, whether it was his or not. But that is really the ease of it all. It just has to be a system.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of our little chat with Rolf Johnson, my brother, who is a little bit of a handyman and a cook and everything else around here. Again, he's one of those guys we can't run without, and he keeps everybody in good spirits around here between him and Johnny O. They're good together. Anyways, see you next time, and don't forget to subscribe at the bottom of the page, and you can join us for other episodes of Our Door County Girl. See you next time. Bye. Thanks for watching Door County Girl. Don't forget to subscribe, and we will see you next time.